The Final Fantasy series has been around since 1987 and has been an important and influential franchise for RPGs around the world. Originally created by Hironobu Sakaguchi, the series has continued to change and evolve with the technology to keep pushing the RPG genre forward. The first three games began on the Japanese Famicom system, while the rest of the world only received the first game for the NES. The next three games came out on the Super Famicom. Of those games, the rest of the world received the fourth and sixth installments on the SNES. After a disagreement with Nintendo, the Final Fantasy series jumped over to the PlayStation system for the next three mainline games. Of course, like most successful franchises, there have been many spin-off games over the years, but let's stick to the mainline games for now. Final Fantasy X released on the PlayStation 2 in Japan and the US in 2001 and was released internationally in 2002. Many fans mark this game as a major turning point in the series. It is the last turn-based system the series has used, as the games going forward have switched to action-based systems. Taking all the experience gained from the prior games, Final Fantasy X's turn-based combat is one of my favorites to play. This is my quick review of Final Fantasy X.
Listen to my story. This may be our last chance.
The development of Final Fantasy X began in 1999 and had a budget of $32.3 million. That's a lot of money. The game was directed by Yoshinori Kitase and had a team of over 100 people. Kitase was also the director of Final Fantasy VI, VII, and VIII, and was a writer for Final Fantasy V, VI, VII, and X. To say Kitase has experience with Final Fantasy is an understatement. This is also the first game to have Nobuo Uematsu not compose the entire soundtrack. Nobuo would continue to compose music for the series going forward, but the last full soundtrack he composed was for Final Fantasy IX. For this game, he was joined by composers Masashi Hamauzu and Junya Nakano. As a whole, I really like this soundtrack. It does have some more ambient tracks that I'm used to, but I feel like it fits the world of Spyro well, even though I am not the biggest fan of ambient music. Final Fantasy X is also the first game in the series to include voice acting, and the first Final Fantasy to receive a direct sequel in 2003, Final Fantasy X-2. Not the best naming convention, but with a series as large as this one, what can you do? We may do a playthrough of X-2 on this channel down the road, but let's get back to X. The game has been remastered and re-released several times over the years. The remastered versions are based on the international release, so there's a bit more to the game than the original PlayStation 2 release. This version, which also includes X-2, is available on PlayStation 3, PlayStation Vita, PlayStation 4, Windows, Nintendo Switch, and Xbox One. Take your pick. Without getting into spoilers, you start the game in a futuristic city as a sports player named Tidus. I know how the official pronunciation is said. It just sounds gross, and I won't say it that way. Sorry, not sorry. Tidus is on his way to play a hometown sports game starring himself, when a giant monster shows up out of nowhere and wrecks the city. Tidus and his old pal Auron are eaten? Absorbed? Not sure. When Tidus wakes up, he is floating in the middle of the ocean and has no idea where he is. He then gets hit in the head by a sports ball and finds a beach with other sports players. Amazingly, this is the same sport that he's used to playing for his home city. Thus begins Tidus's journey, as well as yours, in the world of Spyro. You will quickly meet most of your party members on this first island, and then island hop to make it to a big sports tournament. Maybe Tidus will meet someone he knows. Oh, I guess I forgot to mention the city Tidus came from is called Zanarkand, which was destroyed 1,000 years ago according to everyone else you meet. So yeah, there's that to deal with. As I mentioned in the intro, this game has a classic turn-based combat system. Since Final Fantasy IV, the series has used an ATB or active time-based system. Each character in your party would have a meter fill up over time, although this meter was not visible in Final Fantasy IV. Once the meter is full, you can attack, cast a spell, use an item, etc. Final Fantasy X decided to retire that system in favor of the classic turn-based system with a twist. In the top right corner of the screen, you will see a display of who gets to move in what order. So depending on what monsters are attacking you next, you can plan out a defensive strategy. Or maybe you think the boss is almost dead, so why not go on an all-offensive play and hope it doesn't survive and wipe the party? It sounds so simple, but to see the turn order before you make your decision is a pretty big deal. Various actions will actually delay or speed up yours or your enemy's next turn, which adds a simple but effective layer to combat strategy. Another great aspect of the combat system is you have the option to switch party members on the fly in battle without taking a turn. You can end a battle with your close-range fighter only to be attacked by flying monsters in the next random encounter. No problem, just switch to your magic casters and Waka with his sports ball to teach those monster birds a lesson. The game does not have a traditional leveling system either. You do gain levels, but they are sphere levels. For every sphere level you gain, you can move one space on the sphere grid. As you move around the grid, you can spend spheres to enhance your character's attributes. Some spheres will boost strength, some boost magic, some speed, and some spheres will grant new abilities or spells. It's a new twist on a classic flavor. There is also an equipment customization mechanic in the game. As you play through the game, you will find weapons and armor with different properties linked to them. Sometimes the equipment may have a blank slot on it. You can use specific items to enhance the weapon or armor by filling in that blank slot with an attribute of your choosing. Maybe you want a shield with auto haste, or a rod that can grant 1 MP cost. Just get the items needed, and you can make it so. Just be ready for a bit of a grind for some of those rare items. The avatar character for this adventure is Tidus. He has no idea how the world of Spira works, and neither do we, the player, the first time through. I think this is a great way of storytelling, for this game at least. We get to experience the world of Spira alongside Tidus as he learns the truth about this world and his place in it, and it doesn't necessarily feel out of place when people are always explaining things to Tidus and us about the world. He's a bit of a brat at the start of the game, but I think some of his foolishness actually benefits him in his journey on Spira. Tidus uses swords for weapons and shields for armor. Auron is a longtime bodyguard and friend to Tidus' father. He has been watching over Tidus since Jecht disappeared many years ago. Gee, I wonder if that will come back around. Auron uses large swords called katanas for weapons and bracers for armor. He has some of the best lines in the entire game. Also, he has cool shades and a jug of, I assume, alcohol with him at all times. Sorry. Auron's my favorite character. Moving on. Yuna is a white mage summoner hybrid character you meet on the first island in the game. She is very timid and quite apologetic at times, and is your classic healer, being adept with white magic. But she can also summon some of the classic creatures like Shiva and Ifrit, and some new creatures just for this game. The cool things about the Aeons, as they are called, is that when you summon them in battle, you take control of them. A great way to shake things up in combat. Yuna uses rods for weapons and rings for armor. Lulu is the black mage of the group. She has very high magic damage and can learn a good amount of spells. Most of the regular monsters have low magic resistance, so spells are a great way to deal out some serious damage. Not sure what they were thinking with her outfit though. She has all those belts and that low cut. On second thought, they knew what they were doing. She has a very cold and dark demeanor, and her stare completely fits the phrase, "if looks could kill." Lulu uses dolls resembling the mascots of Final Fantasy for weapons and bangles for armor. Wakka is a sport player who wants to play in one more sports tournament before he retires. His team, the Besaid Aurochs, have never won a game. Not just a tournament, they have never won a game. That's like the Detroit Lions 0-16 record, but do that every year. That's a football reference for those in the know. Wakka starts as a very pious person to the game's religion, Yevon, but has the most character growth throughout the game in my opinion. I'll let you play it to see for yourself. Wakka uses blitz balls for weapons and arm guards for armor. Kimahri is a Ronso, which is a bipedal dog-cat thing with a unicorn horn. His horn is broken when we meet him, and he doesn't really start to talk until halfway through the game. In terms of Final Fantasy classes, Kimahri is a blue mage. He is able to learn overdrive skills from certain monsters you find throughout your travels. Sadly, these overdrives are not that great. In fact, Kimahri is not that great, in my opinion. He starts in the middle of the sphere grid so he can travel down anyone else's path, but he's always a few steps behind whoever's path you send him down. He just becomes a worse version of that character. The designers should have let him use his blue magic outside of his overdrives or something. The best thing about Kimahri is his interactions with Biron and Yankee. Kimahri uses spears for weapons and armlets for armor. The last party member is Rikku, and she is the thief character. She has high speed and comes with the steal ability. I love how steal works in this game. When you steal, it works the first time, every time. You can continue trying to steal from the same enemy, but the success rate drops drastically. She doesn't do a ton of physical damage, but she does break into Lulu's sphere grid so she can learn some magic. Rikku uses claws for weapons and targes for armor. Though the story may not be the best story ever written, and rather predictable, I really like this game. Personally, I think the story is fine. The characters are interesting, except for Kimahri, and the world building is great. Spira feels like a very lived-in place, and there is plenty of lore and history throughout the game to find if you want to look for it. The developers made a whole language for the Albed people, which you can learn if you want to as well. The music is another standout for me. I can tell which tracks were written by Nobuo and which ones were not. But the other tracks are really good and work well together to really feel as though they are from Spira itself. I give Final Fantasy X 4 stars out of 5. I think it is a must-play for any Final Fantasy fan, and is a good starting point for those unfamiliar with the series. It is the first game in the series to have full voice acting, and I think the actors do a really good job. I mean, they have Bender from Futurama as the voice of Wakka. The combat system is one of the best turn-based systems I have ever played, and some of the music tracks are now iconic for the franchise. Since the remaster, the game is available on several platforms, so go grab a copy for yourself. I'm Turtle029, and thanks for watching RPG Treasure Trove. See you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.